There you are.
How are you, sir?
I've had better days.
I'm sure it's been a trying several months, not just with the stay-at-home stuff, but and worrying about family and things of that nature, but from a business standpoint as well, and how all of this has affected the miners and Rent One Park and the staff and the players and personnel. But I wanted to kind of go back, Mike, to let's go back to the end of March when the stay-at-home order was issued. There were already things that were affecting the miners, events that were scheduled and just immediately came to a stop.
Right. We had already had some signs. Our relationship with Softball Canada. Um, there were things about what was going to happen with the Olympics, and so there were already signs of, oh, this isn't good. And it's funny. I had been in Las Vegas for a weekend. I want to say the 6, 7, 8, something like that of March, and was talking with an Uber driver taking us from dinner over to back to the hotel. And I said, how's it going? How's this affecting you? He said, well, it's not this week, but next week this place will have no one here. It'll be a ghost town. He said we had 110,000 people in conventions next week alone cancel. And when Vegas shuts down, when Disney shuts down,
Yeah.
there's a big issue going on.
Yeah, yeah, there is, and even people may not realize that ball season at Rent One Park starts March. I mean, you've got teams from up north, high school teams that they come down here to get into a little bit better weather. They're on the turf.
Right.
We have college. John A plays a couple of games here. Um, the first,
We probably had 10, 12 games played here before all this happened.
yeah, and probably the first big event that took the hit at Rent One was the OVC tournament.
Yeah. Once the colleges started canceling their seasons, um, I think it was maybe in Harvard that cancel was the first in the Ivy League to cancel. And I was getting calls, hey, there are going to be some guys in that league that are going to be available. And yeah, there were an awful lot of guys that were available.
Wow. Then, as you mentioned, the Canadian Wild, of course, travel restrictions between the US and Canada were cut off, or the border was cut off with travel restrictions. And that decision just came very, very quick. That was just a cut and dry. It just wasn't going to happen.
Right. They knew, I believe it was till the 1st of July was the original thing that they were going to be, borders were going to be shut down. And if anybody left and came back, they had to be in quarantine for 14 days. So Mark Smith and I talked, and he said, there's just no way this is going to work this year. He was trying to figure out, how do I get my team to be able to practice? He had players all over, some in the United States, somewhere in Canada. And so it was a big deal for him just to get started.
And then Colt World Series, of course, international Colt World Series.
Right.
Teams from all over the globe come into Marion, and that was the next domino to fall.
Yeah, I mean, there were certainly enough signs that what we had hoped was that as our league didn't start until mid-May, there was kind of the hope that, well, maybe there will be some control of this by then. By May, for sure, we're going to be fine.
Yeah.
And it became more clear as hospitalizations were up and deaths were up, and that wasn't going to be the case.
Yeah. So then meetings can start. I mean, I know that Frontier League meets all the time, and you're part of discussions with them, and so there's always kind of been a hope that I know, at least on my part, we're going to see a little bit of something, whether it's a 40-game schedule, a 60-game schedule, something was going to break. And I kind of held on to that hope that was going to happen. But then today, the announcement comes out from the league. We're going to suspend the 2020 championship season.
Well, I was part of the hope. I was the head of the competition committee, which was tasked with by our board of directors to say, okay, if we're going to play, when can we play? When can we start? We were looking at dates starting the weekend of the 4th of July, starting then. Okay, back that up 2 weeks, maybe the 19th, start then. When could we go until? But in the end, we were dealing with 7 different states with 7 different openings, 7 different gathering restrictions and social distancing requirements. And then you had the 2 teams in Canada and the fact they still couldn't come here.
Right.
And so we kept looking at what are all these options. And we were looking at expanded rosters because players weren't getting a long enough time, because if they were sheltered in place, how would they work out to play? So we had that. And then finally last week, when Canada ended up getting extended till the end of July, then the dominoes started to fall pretty hard.
And it really did roll very quickly from that point on. And I know that there's just so many logistical things. I guess the first question I want to ask, though, I know that teams in the state of Illinois were dealing with the Illinois Department of Public Health. What kind of conversations did you have with them? And the second part of that question is, did you have any contact with the governor's office?
Our owner, John Simmons, has connections within the governor's office. And so we got some early on signs that this was going to be a while. And then when we saw what the phases were going to be laid out, and you saw, okay, we're only in phase 2 when all this was happening.
Right.
When we get to phase 3, we can gather up to 10 people. And we finally can go outside to restaurants, socially distanced, of course. Well, phase 4 wasn't going to happen until, as it's scheduled to happen tomorrow. So that's June 25th. For us to be able to operate really was going to take phase 5, which was going to require a vaccine or I think it was called a herd immunity. And science was going to determine that. So, and then we looked at last weekend. It came out, major league teams were bringing their players down to camps. And all of a sudden, they have a bunch of players that are testing positive. We're looking at players at LSU and Clemson, Kansas State. And as they're having these groups of guys together, they're testing positive. In the end, we are, as an organization, responsible for the safety and health of our players, the safety and health of our host families that our players would come here and live with, many of which are retired. They would be considered in the higher risk group. So am I going to bring players that might have been from New York or Florida or Texas or California and bring them in here and put them with host families? So we're saying, oh, that's not going to work. The only option would be to, in essence, put them in a bubble. Now, Major League Baseball can do that because they have billions of dollars in TV revenue. We don't have that.
Right.
So the end result is I can't put them in a bubble. I can't sequester them. The economies don't work. So if I were to put them in a hotel at $100 a night, 25 players, staff, so it's $3,000 a day just to house them. When they got to the ballpark, they would have to be, we'd have to put a thermometer or, test their temperature. They'd have to be tested again before the game. We couldn't put them in our clubhouse. Our clubhouse wouldn't be big enough. Social distancing requirements. We would have to get a second temporary clubhouse brought in, home and visitors. Everybody came in the ballpark. All of our employees would have to be checked. Um, how do I responsibly do that just so we can have baseball?
And you're not even talking about fans that may come to Renlon. That's just
So we
team
can put
and
684 people in our ballpark. I still think there's a lot of people. There's a lot to go. You know what? I'm going. I want to go, and I get that.
especially with Major League Baseball being so tardy in their plans and getting rolling.
I think there'd be a lot of people would want to come out. But if I look at our social media today, as we have made this announcement, overwhelmingly it has been very sad but understandable. This was really the smart move. So it confirms what the Simmons family believed in, what we believed in as an organization, that as badly as we wanted to play, and was going to be a great team. Ralph Santana and Chris Stowe made a comment to me and said, this may be the best job you've done of building a juggernaut since 2010. It was going to be a really great team.
Yeah.
So it was very hard today to get all those players on a Zoom call and talk to them about this. And I feel for them. My guess is for some of them, they won't wear a baseball uniform again professionally. And I hated being the bearer of that news. It was very tough.
So it was this morning at 10 o'clock that the league released their press release to everybody. At the same time, there was a lot of things taking place within the minors organization. Not only, we'll come back to the players conversation here in a bit, but the front office, there you have the players side that you're trying to take care of and explain to them what's going on. But now the organization has to deal with season ticket holders, sponsors. How
we didn't want them to wonder, well, what happens
exactly.
to us? Did you forget about us? So we did not. So we had emails already prepared. Everything was just a push the button at 10 o'clock to go to our employees. I mean, I feel for our employees who, some of which have been here for 13 seasons. This was their summer that they would come and work around one park. The season ticket holders that worked, saved money to be able to buy season tickets to come out here. The group leaders that took the time to organize all the groups. So we had to get to them and our sponsors and all of them right away. So they all got an email this morning at 10 o'clock and laid out for them where we are. They had the option if there was a form simply for them to fill out. If you'd like a refund on your tickets, fill this out, send it back. If you'd like us to roll it over to 2021, we will do that as well. So we had to lay out those options for them and had to do it right away.
Absolutely, and be proactive about it. And I think you guys are to be commended that you didn't want there to be that questioning period of not knowing.
Right. Well, we owe them that. So instead of you do a press announcement and all of a sudden people going, well, what about us? We paid money there. So you can't do that. You've got to take care of people.
While those were going out, you mentioned it moments ago. You had a Zoom meeting with all of your players on this year's roster, and how did you start the meeting? How does that conversation go?
Well, the one thing that if you've seen me around our players, I have always kind of bought the belief that the only way is to be transparent. Just tell them the truth. And as I tell them, sometimes, you wonder why I pinch hit for you in the 8th last night? Don't complain behind my back. Come and ask me. I'll tell you. You may not like it. You may not have agreed. It may not have worked, but it will be the truth. And so I simply laid out and said, right now, as we're having this call, it's being announced that the Frontier League is not going to have a 2020 season. Let me tell you the reasons so that you at least understand why that's not going to happen. Let me explain to you about your contractual obligations to us as players, what I want to do for you, And so under our bylaws, if one of our guys has an opportunity to go play someplace, be it Sugar Land, Texas, because they're trying to put the 4 teams together there, whether one of the other teams in our league is able to put something together, I'm going to lend them out to them and let them play there. And honestly, I was touched by, I got calls right away from a few of our guys who said, Mike, I really want to play, but I want to be back there next year. So I want to be sure. How do we be sure that that happens? So that means a lot to me.
So it has, and it may be too early to answer this, Mike, but has the league considered maybe some of like the guys that would have aged out at the end of this season? Has there been any conversation about maybe granting a year exemption or something maybe into 21?
Well, we're talking about having a directors meeting, owners meeting at the end of July. And I'm sure that will be a topic of conversation because it affects an awful lot of people, awful lot of players. We may have just ended somebody's career, because of COVID, because of our age restrictions.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot, you talk about the opportunity to maybe play elsewhere, but there's also a little bit of a correlation that kind of plays in with Major League Baseball, because just a month ago, there's over 900 minor leaguers that were released from there.
Yeah, right now, since the 1st of May, all told, it's about 1,100 have been released. So there's a lot of players out there, and there's a lot of guys looking for jobs. But they all want to play now.
Sure.
So we'll let this kind of shake out a little bit and have some conversations with guys about 2021. I really have to look at all the players that are out there. Ultimately, I have a responsibility to put the very best minors team on the field that I possibly can. And we'll look at all those options to do that. Some of our guys will probably shut it down. It's natural. It happens every year. And so I'll kind of wait that out, the emotions of all this to get past us, and then talk to guys and see what they want to do.
So from the minors front office, and there's other events that take place. The stadium is, it's hosted concerts, great concerts, and it's available for rental, for field use, for Diamond Club use. Where does that stand right now? I know it's all based on phases within the state of Illinois,
Yeah.
but
As of right now, we are we're waiting this out a little bit. We want to be sure that we have matched all the phases. As much as I'd love to see people out here playing on the field, I also have to be sure from a COO responsibility to be sure that the Simmons interests are protected and I don't put them in a situation of liability. I know they would feel that way as well. So I want to.
Well, he is an attorney. He is an attorney, so I'm sure.
Yes, yes, and a really smart one too, by the way. But we want to make sure that all the health and safety things are in place, and not rush into something. If we have that option to wait, we probably will wait.
20 years you're on a field this time of year. It's disappointing. I'm just sad. I'm just sad.
Yeah.
I think is the best way to describe it. But 20 years in a row that you've been standing in a dugout.
Almost every summer, from figure about May 1 and through September 10th to 20th, every single day at noon at home. I'm at the ballpark every day. That has been my life every day. And the funny thing is, there's things I love about summer that I would love to be able to enjoy. You know what a music fan I am. I love going to great music concerts. And most bands tour during the summer. So here I have this summer off. and there's no tours.
No, and doesn't look like there's going to be much in 20.
It does not. Not certainly not until later. Yeah, I think it's going to be a while.
It's
Although I did see Live Nation is going to be trying some. I'm not sure if you saw this today. The drive-in concerts, where in essence you would have a space next to you, and so you'd have your car, and next to you you would have an open space from which you could bring lounge chairs and enjoy a concert that way. I think Brad Paisley's going to do some that way.
Garth is going to do one.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Garth's doing like 200 drive-ins and things like that. So,
By the
well,
way, not pushing, Netflix at all. They certainly don't need my help. But I've been watching the Garth Brooks series on Netflix, and it's really, really good.
amazing.
I had the chance, music guy. I had a chance to meet him a number of years ago down in Florida. And I have a picture of him and I in the dugout down in where the Washington Nationals play. Then the Florida Marlins, and he was the nicest guy. If anything, I'll give him a little plug. He doesn't need it, but I'll give him a plug.
He's hurting for money.
Yeah.
You can appreciate it.
He was genuinely nice and kind. And that day after the game, they brought a bar stool out. He sat on a bar stool. They set up a table with water, and they brought him sandwiches. And he signed and took photos with every single person until the last one had left. And I walked away saying, here's a guy who understands how important fans are.
Well, just to give you a little trivia information, Garth Brooks holds the record for the longest autograph line, and that was at CMA Fest in Nashville. And he signed autographs at CMA Fest for over 23 hours. They actually came and pulled him out of the tent and said, you have to go home, because he stood there for 23 hours. He said, I will not leave until the last autograph has been signed. And that's how he built his foundation. That's how he built his fan base. And that's what it takes. But
You're not kidding.
I could talk music for.
We will have to talk about that sometime. That's incredible.
Absolutely.
I'm not at all shocked.
Yeah, absolutely. And number one, prior to that, he's a huge baseball fan. Went to training camp years ago, I believe, with San Diego.
And the Mets. That's when I met him, when he did it with the Mets.
Yeah.
I'll send you the picture. I have a picture with him and I in the dugout, him in a Mets uniform, and he made me think like I was doing him a favor taking the photograph.
That's awesome. That is awesome. I guess, Mike, let's wrap this up. I mean, what's your message to fans of Southern Illinois? And as you say, I mean, you look tired, brother. I mean,
I'm exhausted. Yeah, I am.
It's been a long day, and
yeah.
What's your message?
We're going to really miss the family, our baseball family, our fans, our workers here at the ballpark, ushers, parking lot attendants, concession people. They're all part of our family, our promo team, our front office staff that works really hard all year to plan for this, our players. I mean, I'm really missing my baseball family this year. It's pretty tough, but we'll get past it. And there's certainly people that have it tougher than I do. But it's not my favorite day.
We'll just leave it right there.
You got it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, man. See ya. Thanks for having me.
We'll talk to you later.
Got to see you.